Whatever you put on your skin, you should be willing to put in your mouth. If you're not, don't put it on your skin.
More than 3 million people affected by autoimmune disorders, and 20 years ago it was only 2 million.
If I had to make a list, my top priority for everyone is really environmental health.
Why do we need a detox?
We need to focus on detoxification as not a luxury or a health and wellness trend. It needs to be a necessity.
Talk to us about this intermittent fasting.
Most people I see doing intermittent fasting, they do it incorrectly.
So tell us about these 7 ancient secrets.
When our internal body clock is off, everything else suffers.
What is your relationship with your health? Now, my guest today is going to blow you away. Not only does she have the largest integrative healthcare practice in the United States with over 17,000 patients, but she's the one that has been able to integrate not only functional medicine, traditional Western medicine, and Ayurvedic medicine, a science that's been around for 5,000 years that comes from our ancestors. Not only that, she is here to share some crazy statistics that there are 3 million people right now suffering from autoimmune disorders. This is way more than just a decade ago. The rates for breast cancer and colon cancer are on the rise, and thyroid cancer are on the rise in young people, young men and women today in her practice. And she has written a book to tell us all about her new mission. Her name is Dr. Chiti Parikh, and her book is called Intentional Health. She's also been published by Hay House, and it's Intentional Health: Detoxify, Nourish, and Rejuvenate Your Body into Balance. What I'm so excited about to get into is not only is she trained in Western medicine, but she has and been known to be an integrative medicine physician from New York, as well as now an author. She's founded the largest holistic medicine center in the country, focused on making integrative medicine accessible, allowing your insurance to actually pay for it and affordable for all. She recently published her first book, and her mission is to simplify evidence-based medicine free from commercial bias, while also integrating the best practices of both Eastern and Western medicine. She's also a mama of almost 2, and she attended the University of Cornell, and she's also worked at the Center of New York Presbyterian Hospital. She's also trained in medical acupuncture and Ayurveda. She is every Brown family's dream. She's also studied at functional medicine, as well as combining her cutting-edge Western medicine with ancient wisdom of Eastern traditions into a holistic approach. She's been on the Dr. Oz Show, NBC News, Rolling Stone, Vice, New York Times, Women's Health, and Wall Street Journal. And today, she is on because we are unpacking what it means to detox and why it's so important to detox in our society today. How we are exposed to tons more toxins than our family members were exposed to, and how 5,000-year-old science, ancient wisdom, is now coming back into the forefront, and how that can begin to not only heal. We are going to talk about our circadian rhythms. We're going to talk about if you're a mama, if you're a pregnant mama, if you're a postpartum mama. We're going to talk about the differences of intermittent fasting and how we're doing it wrong, and how we could actually lose up to 5% body fat in 1 month if we're doing it properly, and also what we really need to know about anti-aging, as well as what's on the rise within our health around cancers, and how we can take back agency for our family, for our gut health, for our microbiome, for our nervous system, and so much more. This is the episode I've been waiting for, and I'm so glad Dr. Parikh takes us through all of it in her newest book, Intentional Health. So without further ado, you are going to get so much value out of this. I think this is going to be one that you're going to revisit on and on and on again. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you will definitely just fall in love with her aura and how patient she is, and her grace and her wisdom. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Chiti Parikh on the Brave Table this week. Well, welcome to the Brave Table. I'm so excited for this episode. I feel like it's so timely now with the number of autoimmune diseases rising, the fact that so much of our food has now been under scrutiny because of all of the ultra processed items that it has. And I feel like your book is bringing people back into health. So, can you take us through what's been kind of the through line of your journey? Because you're not just a medical doctor, and you're not just a functional medicine doctor, and you're not just an Ayurvedic practitioner, and why this field of medicine?
So, a lot of this started from my personal experience. So, I grew up in India, and I still remember my grandma would take me to the kitchen when I was sick, and she would put together some random herb spice concoction. It would taste awful, but I would feel better. And then, obviously, I went through, my own experience, health experience. I took a year off before I started medical school, actually, to travel across Asia by myself, and that's when I really got to see firsthand how Eastern medicine is really practiced, not just as medicine, as part of life. So, seeing that in countries like Thailand to Laos to Indonesia and India, obviously, it really opened my eyes that health, illness, disease, life, none of these things are separate. They're all very much integrated. So, we have to look at it as such. So, as you can imagine, going through traditional Western medicine training, it was sort of the opposite experience where everything was sort of reductionist in the sense everything came down to a diagnosis and you're matching an ill to a pill, right? You have this diagnosis and I'm supposed to give this medication. That was sort of my Western medicine training. So, from what my experience was personally, to through my travels, to what I learned in medical school, I knew there was a big gap in between and I wanted to fill that. That's the reason why I pursued training in integrative medicine and functional medicine, learning more about Ayurveda, got trained in acupuncture. Because Eastern medicine's been around for thousands of years. It's time tested and it's very much preventive focus, looks at you as a person. And Western medicine really excels at more acute diseases, right? So I'm not saying we have to say goodbye to Western medicine. But what I'm saying is, why do we have to pick one or the other? Why can we bring all types of medicines under one roof and give ourselves access to 5,000 years of science and really focus on healthcare, not just sick care, which is what we often end up doing. So I always say, I'm the kind of doctor, I want to be the kind of doctor that people go to stay healthy, not just when they're sick. So I think a lot of my training outside of the conventional Western medicine helps me keep people healthy. So that's what really encourages me to get the word out that this type of medicine exists. This should be the gold standard and really make that accessible to as many people as possible.
Well, and I feel like you've already done that in many ways, right? I mean, your clinic is one of the fastest growing integrative wellness centers in the country. Is that right?
Yeah. So I wanted to bring this type of medicine to as many people as possible, especially the people who need it the most. So often when we talk about, things like integrative medicine or functional medicine or Ayurveda, you have to seek out these providers. You have to pay out of pocket. It can be very expensive and cost prohibitive. So I wanted to create a space where it is within a big healthcare system, a hospital system. So our program currently has, 7 doctors. We have 5 acupuncturists. We have a meditation instructor, yoga instructor, nutritionist, psychologist, all working together as a team under an insurance-based model, and we serve 15 to 17,000 patient visits a year. So we're able to make this type of care available exactly in the same umbrella where people get their regular health care, taking their insurance. So it's not a cost burden. And also, I think it's a bigger point of saying that this type of medicine is not separate. Like, this is part of healthcare. And I envision that there should be centers like this as part of every single clinic, every single hospital, just like they have a department of cardiology, or, they should have this department for everyone in every healthcare setting.
Wow. So you've been able to create a model where it is an insurance based model, where you're not having to pay thousands of dollars out of pocket just because there's a whole sector of people. We're in I'm in Austin, Texas, so there's a lot of them here where you have to pay out of pocket, can't even submit to your insurance, or you'd be you'd be lucky if your insurance even picks up those tabs. And when the majority of people are going to doctors when they're just sick, instead of getting a full holistic approach, or they don't even kind of do a lot of the things that you would do in functional medicine. So can you first kind of, well, where is your practice, so that maybe all of us after this episode could like run to it? I know you said
Okay.
it's in Cornell.
Mhm.
um, and then two, do you see the future of this shifting? And for those medical doctors, traditional ones who are listening to this and is kind of like curious and is probably going to get your book, what advice do you have for them, or for the audience that's listening, to ask their medical doctors about how they can do a more integrative, holistic approach?
Well, that's an excellent question. This is something I talk to my patients about all the time, that we have to be advocates for our health and we need to spread the word. We need to make people aware that this exists and more people should have access to it. So I take it upon myself to really educate other doctors and clinicians within our healthcare system and outside to say, this is possible, this is doable. And you don't have to be an expert in this, because to be honest, in my medical school, 4 years of medical school, I got 4 hours of instruction on nutrition. 4 years and 4 hours of instruction on nutrition, when we know the diet changes can prevent or help with about 80% of the diseases that we see. So clearly a disconnect. So I really encourage other clinicians to engage in this conversation where we're focusing on prevention. This is not voodoo medicine. This is bread and butter medicine that we all went in this field for. We want to take care of people. We want to keep them healthy. That's why we went into medicine, not just for prescriptions or stare at a computer screen for hours. So when you sort of resonate with the goal and the passion, what brought us in this field to begin with, I think people understand that. And you'll be surprised. I think a lot of people, when they encounter their own health problems, where especially doctors, when doctors get sick, they make the worst patients because we're not used to seeing ourselves on the other side of the table. So one of a lot of doctors and nurses come to me because they have some sort of a health issue and then they realize, oh my God, this is so challenging. Just to even get an appointment, figure out which doctor, taking all these pills, they're like, this is awful. Like, I don't want to do this. I want to take better care of myself. I want to learn more about nutrition. So I often use that avenue and say, forget about your patients for a second. Just talk about yourself. What are things that you would like to do better? How do you want to feel physically, mentally, emotionally, especially post COVID, when a lot of a lot of healthcare providers really took a beating, right? There's so much burnout. So let's start the conversation there. It's like, if you learn how to take better care of yourself, that knowledge will definitely help you taking better care of other people. But we got to put that oxygen mask on ourselves first.
So true. And I just love how, after writing 4 books myself, and we have the same publisher, which is amazing, Hay House. I'm so glad that you're bringing this information to the forefront. Your new book, Intentional Health, and it's all about detoxify, nourish, and rejuvenating your body into balance. What was the impetus for writing this book? And I know that you are so busy seeing, with your practice growing immensely year after year. Why this book, and why the title Intentional Health?
So nowadays, there's not a lack of information when it comes to health and wellness. In fact, there's just too much out there. So when you have this noise of so many conflicting health, wellness, information, advice coming at you, how do you know what's applicable to you? Where do you even start? It can be so overwhelming. So I wanted to bring 5,000 years of science to everybody in a way that was simple, easy to understand, and very, very actionable. And I have a long wait list of patients. I can only see so many. So I wanted to share sort of my secret sauce as to how do I approach patients that come to me. And I always say, I don't treat any diseases. I don't treat any symptoms. I treat people, because two people can come to me with the same diagnosis, but how I approach them will be completely different. So by combining best of Eastern and Western medicine, I share in the book Seven Ancient Secrets. Think about these as like stepping stones to building your wellness journey. And the reason why I picked the word intentional is because if I do something, let's say if I make a change in my diet because my doctor told me, or my wife or my husband told me, that might only get me so far. And I'm less likely to follow that in the long term. Intentionality brings this element of discipline, of investment, of putting yourself in the middle of the conversation, and being an active participant in your own healthcare journey. So, starting with an intention, setting an intention is what the book starts with. It teaches you how to actually set an intention. And when we do that, it's like putting instructions into a GPS, right? If I want to go somewhere, I need to tell my body how to get there. What is the destination? Then we can map out the journey. Often we do things just because, hey, I'm supposed to be this weight, I'm supposed to be this waist size, so I'm going to change my diet because of that, right? But what is the true intention behind doing that? So I ask this question to my patients all the time, and I cannot tell you how many times I see tears because no one has really asked them, what does health really look like for you? Because they come to me with a long list of symptoms and diseases and diagnoses they've had over time. But taking a step back, I'm like, what does healthy version of you look like? Like, what would you like to feel? What would you like to see in yourself in the next 6 months? And then most people pause and they have tears because no one has ever brought that up. So that's why intentionality is how we start the journey. And the seven ancient secrets sort of become your guide through every single step.
I love that you open up the book with this, this ode to this yogi who has literally. You have a picture of him, and it's just in the introduction, but you have a picture of him, the Amar Bharti, who's held up his right arm for 45 years. And I often heard stories about this growing up, right? Because my lineage is also from India, but I never actually saw it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is true. So take us through, how is this even possible? Somebody holding their arm up for 45 years.
Yeah.
And then you kind of talk about, obviously Ayurveda is a 5,000-year-old science. And this whole idea of this detoxification in panchakarma, which is, it's for any brown person that's grown up over there, or not over there, but you have your grandparents and your parents kind of teaching you these ancient ways and this wisdom. How can we learn more about what it is that we are detoxing?
Yeah, that's a great question because often we talk about detox a lot, but like, what are you detoxing? Where are these toxins really coming from? That's a great question because if you understand where these toxins are coming from, how they're being made, you'll be able to prevent them and get rid of them. If you don't know how do we get rid of it, right? How do we prevent it? So in Ayurveda, there's a wonderful saying it was one of my favorite quotes. It says, food that is metabolized or digested properly becomes nutrition. And food that is not metabolized or digested properly becomes toxic and root cause of disease. So food is the same. How our body processes that food determines whether that's going to be nourishment for me or is that going to be a toxin for me. So in Western world, we often focus on, keto diet, paleo, and this and that. But in Eastern medicine, there's no perfect diet. There's no magical diet. The diet that works best for you is the one that you can actually digest or metabolize. And it's going to be different for all of us. And I take it one step further and I'd say it's not just food. It's your thoughts, your emotions, your traumas. Every single experience, every single action, thought, karma, essentially, that comes to you in your life needs to be processed or metabolized. If it is not, it becomes root cause of disease. Because disease often starts in the mind, in the spirit, and then it manifests in the body. So if we're talking about toxins, they're not just toxins from eating poor food or poor quality food, but it's also thoughts, emotions, experiences, traumas, right? So that's why I love this idea of that we need to focus not just on changing our experiences or how we're thinking or how we're eating. But instead, what we need to prioritize is how we actually process these things. It's a very different way of thinking about it. So a lot of things like panchakarma or detox rituals in ancient sciences have a big component. There's no magic herbs. People think it's like the magic herbs you take and that detoxify you, or it's drinking a bunch of green juice is going to detoxify you. But it's not that. Your body is so well trained at detoxification. It's just that we get in the way, right? Detoxification needs time and energy, a tremendous amount of energy. So if I'm eating a cheeseburger and ice cream and then expect to take some herbs and some green juice to detoxify me, that's not going to work. So a lot of detoxification is stepping back. It's saying, I'm going to ease into a simple diet. So you eat simple foods. So we know khichdi in Indian cooking, it's very common, right? It's like simple foods. You reduce how much you're using your senses. Not scrolling through Instagram for hours at a time, because that also takes a lot of energy. I want to conserve that energy and put it towards detoxification. So I simplified the process of panchakarma into the 28-day reset in the book. And the 28-day reset, people always say, 28 days is so long. Like, yeah, it is. Because detoxification doesn't happen on its own. So there's 4 stages to this process. First is preparation. You need to ease into detox. Then week 2, you're actually detoxifying. Week 3 is reintroduction. How do you ramp back up to your normal routine? And week 4 is rejuvenation. How do you reap benefits from the detox you just did?
And I want to kind of double click on, detoxing. Why do we need a detox? Like, people are probably watching this and, they want to brave their health in this season. And, this is it's something that you hear when you're going to, the spas or the wellness centers. Oh, I'm going to detox. Or if you want to lose a bunch of weight because you have a big event happening, so you'll refrain from certain things. But you have and you have a lot of pictures in the book, which I absolutely love. This is not just a regular doctor wellness book. You have a lot of photos and graphs and charts, which I think is so important to know the difference between a lot of the things that you're talking about, especially with ancient wisdom. And it gives us a clear map of, oh my gosh, we can do this by ourselves. So we can actually do a 28-day detox. But why do we need it? Do all of us need to detox? Because you just said our bodies are natural detoxifiers. We just get in the way.
Exactly. So if we're living a simple life, right? So if you're eating at a regular time, eating a healthy diet, low stress, exercise, then you probably don't need to detox. So your body's able to do it every single day. But we know our modern lifestyle is not conducive to allowing our body to do what it does best, right? So it gets in the way. So that's why, just like we do spring cleaning, right? We take care of everything else in our life. I charge my phone, right? Otherwise it won't work. I have to get an oil change from my car. I have to service my car. I have to clean, refrigerators break down. Every single thing that we use in our life needs maintenance, needs cleanup, a tune-up. So does our body. We don't think about it this way, right? So if I'm asking my body to work overtime, I also need to give it rest and break so it can repair, regenerate, and detoxify. So I would say for most people, we do need some type of detox on an annual basis. And if you think about it, this is not a new concept. Think about every single religion. There is a time of the year where every single religion suggests that you should be fasting, whether it's Lent, whether it's Ramadan, whether it's Navratri. So there's so many different festivals or times of the year where religions tell us that we need to ease off. We need to simplify our diet. We need to fast. We need to focus more on spirituality during that time, because our body needs it. We need it on a regular basis, but definitely on an annual basis. And there's actually studies that have shown that the best times to detox is actually around time when the seasons are changing. So right now is a great time as we're transitioning from summer into fall, or when we transition into spring. These are the times when we also fall sick a lot, right? Everyone gets sick around this time of the year or around the springtime because our immune system is changing. Our body is trying to adapt to the new season. So this is a great time for us to simplify our diet, allow our body to transition, to protect our immune systems, to strengthen our immune system, to leave those toxins behind as we enter a new season. So it's beautiful to see how this idea of detox, which seems very modern, actually has roots in all different parts of the world, all different parts of religions, and different religions and cultures embedded into it.
And why 28 days? I know that in the book you have, the 4 steps that you just talked about.
Mhm.
And why not 7 days? Why not 10 days? Why 28?
So the longer it takes, the deeper you're going. So you can do a shorter version of it if you like, but the first time you're doing it, I really encourage people to dedicate to 28 days. And again, doesn't mean you're quitting your job for 28 days, you're becoming a hermit. Like, it's nothing like that, right? I always say it's like 30 minutes of your day that you're dedicating to this. It's one less episode on Netflix we're watching, or less time we're spending on social media. You actually end up with more time for yourself during the 28 days than you normally would. So you're actually saving
Okay,
time.
so it's not just food. It's not just food.
Nope.
It's also what you're consuming and how you're actually using your time.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not just the poorly digested food, it's our thoughts, our emotions, right? Our senses, everything that takes up a lot of energy. We're trying to conserve energy. So we're scaling back on our social life a little bit, simplifying our diet, spending more time doing self care, incorporating some of these Ayurvedic routines like self massage, oil pulling, all the things that can be really beneficial in accelerating the detoxification process. But you have to ease into it, ease out of it, and then reap the benefits. It's sort of a stepwise approach.
Wow. Okay, so you have the 7 ancient secrets
Mhm.
that are in the book, and I just absolutely love the way that you have organized this. So tell us about these 7 ancient secrets.
Yeah. So the way I organized it is sort of almost like building a pyramid, right? You start with the most foundational thing. So I'll tell you one thing. I'll give you an example. So I see a lot of patients nowadays coming to me for, say, weight loss. And they have a lot of questions about, how many calories should I be eating? How many carbs? How much protein? What type of workout should I be doing? And universally, the first thing I ask them, and sometimes the only thing that I ask them in the first visit, is when do you eat your meals? When do you go to bed? When do you wake up? When do you work out? I don't ask what type of workout. I don't ask what do you eat. I ask when first. That is because the when is the foundation, because that relates to our circadian rhythm. So, our circadian rhythm, our master body clock, organizes everything in the body. So, imagine how lost would you be if I took away your phone, your watch? You would have no idea what time of the day it is. You'd be late to your meetings, you'd be late to work, your whole day will be a mess, right? So, same thing for our body. When our internal body clock is off, everything else suffers. So you could be eating a perfect diet, but if you're eating at a different time every day, out of sync with your natural rhythms, you're not going to get benefits of it. In fact, it might actually harm you. So you could be eating a perfect keto diet, right? But if you're eating that dinner at 8 or 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., when your body is not in a state to digest that food is going to become toxin. If the same food I eat at, say, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., or 7 p.m. for dinner, it's going to have a very different effect on my body. So we tend to focus on the calories and the carbs. I tend to focus on what really matters is the timing of the meal. So this is an ancient idea, but I can tell you the buzzword in health and wellness in the next few years is going to be something called chrono-nutrition. It's a whole new field in medicine. Chronobiology, chrono-nutrition. It's all about the timing. So that's what we're realizing through research. It's the timing of the food that matters so much more than just the content.
Okay, you're gonna make my mother-in-law really happy. She is so anytime she comes to the States, she's kind of like a stickler on when, we work in our offices, but she'll be a stickler on when the food is delivered, like dropped to our office. Like, she sends us off in a little tiffin, makes it super fresh because for those of you who don't know, that's just what happens in India. It's like so fresh and it has to be, and she's Jane. And so this is her thing, and it's every day around the same time, and she knows breakfast has to be ready by 7:30 before the kids have to go, and it's like clockwork. And I was like, some days My schedule is vary completely. Like, I don't know if I'm going to have lunch at 12. I can't tell you, but I can see and I have reverence for why she's such a stickler. Maybe she doesn't know, or maybe she knows the reason why. Even with our dinner, it's like, all right, like clockwork, because we have our littles too. It's usually earlier, and typically Janes don't eat when the sun goes down, or they eat when the sun goes down or the sun set. Can you talk to us about that and talk to us about, modern medicine or modern nutrition really focusing in on this intermittent fasting? And does it really affect the way that we process food? I know you talked about evening, but what about morning and afternoon?
Yeah. So these days, I talk about metabolic health a lot as it relates to cutting edge Western medicine, Eastern medicine. So I'm actually wearing a glucose monitor right now. So this is how I'm able to prove all the things we're talking about, which is so rewarding because I've seen hundreds of patients in the last couple of years. I started a metabolic health program in our practice where I have patients who are not diabetics wear a glucose monitor to prove exactly this. And I walk them through a 4-week program where I teach them how timing of the meals, intermittent fasting are far more important than just how many carbs or calories you're eating. They're able to see it. They see that if I eat my dinner later, my blood sugar stays high for 5 or 6 hours at night. It actually, then they're also tracking their sleep. They're like, oh, the days when I eat my late dinner, my sleep quality is a lot worse and I feel worse the next day. The days when I don't eat enough carbs, I get more sugar cravings. I get more anxiety. I get more, ADHD symptoms, right? So they're able to correlate all of these things. So intermittent fasting is very sort of hip right now. Everyone's talking about it. But I can tell you, most people I see doing intermittent fasting, they do it incorrectly. That's often why they're not getting the results they're looking for. And it just applies especially to women because women's physiology, biology is very different. Women's hormones are very sensitive to the timing of the meals, especially because our circadian rhythm, which is run by cortisol, our stress hormone, right? So when things are off, when we're not following a routine, then the cortisol tends to be our worst enemy. That's what causes us to gain that stubborn belly fat. I cannot tell you how many of my patients come to me and they're like, Dr. Parikh, I'm eating a perfect diet. I exercise every day. I do X, Y, Z. I cannot lose weight. I cannot get rid of this belly fat. What am I doing wrong? So this is how most people do intermittent fasting, right? They wake up, they're not that hungry in the morning. So they say, I'm just going to have my black coffee, go about my day. I'm not that hungry. I'm going to save my calories. I don't need breakfast. I don't feel like eating it. So lunch comes around and they say, I'm going to get a salad. I'm going to be good today. I'm going to get some salad. I'm going to be healthy. So they get a nice big salad. They eat that. And then 3, 4, 5 o'clock comes around, they're starving. Now they're like, I need something. I need something. And they're like, I'm going to be good. I'm going to eat an apple. Right. And they get to dinner and then all bets are off because you're starving by the end of the day. You're exhausted. You don't have that much willpower by the end of the day. You're like, I just need some food. So then you end up eating a big dinner. Right. And then you go to bed. And then often people will say, Dr. Parikh, I do 16-hour intermittent fast every day. I eat my dinner at 8 and I eat my lunch at 12. So 16 hours I'm fasting. Why isn't this working? But this is completely opposite, out of sync from your circadian rhythm. So let's rewind back to when we were cavemen and women. How did we live, right? For thousands of years before electricity was invented. Our day was very much tied to the sun. When the sun came up, we went out looking for food, we got food. Once the sun was down, you weren't out looking for food because you would become food, right? If you're out trying to look for food at night, someone's going to eat you. Some animal's going to eat you. It's not going to work. So our metabolism was never designed to eat a big meal at night. It just doesn't work that way, right? As much as we would love to have nice big dinners, we're just not designed for it. So the right way of intermittent fasting, I always say, never skip breakfast. So in the morning, our cortisol stress hormone is really high. That's what gets us ready for the day. So cortisol starts to go up in the morning. That's completely normal. Increases our blood pressure, your blood sugar, so you don't pass out as soon as you wake up because you haven't eaten anything all night. So that's normal. The cortisol comes down the minute we break our fast. So when I eat something, especially with some carbs, my body says, hey, I'm not starving. I'm good today. Cortisol starts to come down. So Ideally, you should be eating or breaking fast within 3 hours of waking up. If you don't do that, your cortisol stays high throughout the day to make sure you don't pass out, your blood sugar is not low. So now your cortisol is high all day, even if you're intermittent fasting, right? So that's the mistake. So if you eat a breakfast within 3 hours of waking up, lunch should be your biggest meal. Breakfast and lunch should always have carbs. Should be eaten earlier in the day so you can burn them off. And then after 3 p.m., you really shouldn't be eating that many carbs. So dinner should be more low carb. Dinner should be lighter. You go to bed, you eat an early dinner, at least a 3 hour gap between your dinner and bedtime. So your body can digest the food, your blood sugar is normal, you go to bed, and you switch into burning fat at night. That's how you're going to lose weight, right? So it's all about the timing of your meals. So even if you I have patients who do even 14-hour intermittent fasting, but if they do it this way, I would not be surprised. I've seen people lose 5% body fat in a matter of a month just by changing the timing of their meal. It is eye-opening when you see that.
Wow. And would you say, is this the same even for women with their cycles, differing than men? How would you kind of approach that differently, especially when we're menstruating?
Yeah. So this is something fascinating. When I look at people's blood sugar data, I can actually tell which week they were ovulating, which week they were menstruating, because the pattern completely changes. So when we're PMSing, right before our period, our hormone progesterone is really high. It's the same hormone that is high when you're pregnant. So we almost feel like we're pregnant, right? We want to eat everything. We're hungry all the time. We're a little grumpy. We're bloated. So progesterone actually causes your blood sugar to go high because it's technically preparing you for pregnancy, right? Towards the end of the cycle, it thinks you could be pregnant. So let me change your metabolism so you can hold on to more fat. I'm going to make you crave more sugar so you hold on to more energy, more calories in case you're pregnant, right? If you're not pregnant, then your hormones come down and then you lose all of that, right? So that's how smart your body is. It's kind of preparing for possible pregnancy. So a lot of these PMS symptoms are associated with progesterone. So what I typically do is have people actually front load their carbs when they're PMSing. So the biggest mistake people make is they don't eat enough carbs during the day. So at night, you're going to get all these the sugary cravings. You're going to feel more bloated, mood symptoms. So right before your cycle, I instruct people to eat more complex carbs. And again, I'm not talking about eating, white bread and sugar, cookies. I'm talking about like steel cut oatmeal. I'm talking about quinoa, farro, right? Whole wheat stuff. So, complex grains front part of the day. So breakfast and lunch, I would include more calories earlier in the day that will help you balance your blood sugar throughout the day and into the night. So you don't get those cravings. So that's what your body needs. It's changing. So you're exactly right. Women have very different nutritional metabolic needs than men do. So if you see an Instagram person doing intermittent fasting and running ultra marathon, if it's a man, they're biohackers, they're doing this and that, it's not necessarily going to work for us. It just isn't. We're very different. And our metabolism, our hormones are changing every 5 to 7 years. So what worked for me 5 years ago is not going to work for me now. So we have to respect and understand that our bodies are different, that we need to adjust our diet lifestyle to match that.
Wow. And, I know that there's so many nuances as well, because I remember even after, giving birth to both of my kids, my hormones were obviously out of whack. And I was going through a season where, I was vegetarian, I was vegan. Again, my mother-in-law was in the States. She's hardcore vegetarian. And I was also eating meat at the time. Obviously, didn't do it in the house. However, I noticed that I think things completely shifted. The things that I was eating before or during pregnancy that maybe affected my gut. And I know you have a whole chapter around gut and microbiome that when I was reading through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gold. I felt like things changed of like she was making me rotis and I was like, I don't really eat that stuff. But I think I was okay afterwards, and it made me feel more full. I was producing, more milk, even though my milk supply was not as high. But it was, things were like I was actually okay because I felt so nourished by her. And so, can you just speak to maybe women who are in that fourth trimester, kind of, the hormones are racing? How should they be eating? And does their microbiome change and shift after pregnancy?
Yes, because our gut microbiome is constantly in flux. It is going to respond to our environment, external and internal. So, pregnancy is a major life event. There's a lot of things that change in our body as we prepare for pregnancy, we're pregnant and postpartum. So, one of the big changes happens in our gut microbiome. It actually completely changes how we metabolize food, what nutrients do we absorb, because our body is in highly absorptive state, right? So everything we're eating, our body's like, I'm going to suck up all the nutrients that are in there so I can hold on to it and pass it on to the baby, right? That's his sole objective. So our gut microbiome is a big helper in this whole process. And they've done studies to look at how gut microbiome changes affect not just your metabolism, but also the quality of the milk that you're producing, the content of the milk that you're producing. All of that gets passed on to the baby directly or indirectly. So our gut, our metabolism, our hormones are all cooperating and collaborating to support our changing body. But you're absolutely right. Like, we're just not made aware that all these changes are happening. We kind of have to figure this out on our own. And it can be a huge transition. If I've eaten a certain way my whole life and now I have to completely adjust that, it's a huge transition. And we often feel unsupported and uneducated in that matter, right? And this is why I rely on Eastern medicine a lot, because in Chinese medicine, there's a 40-day rule, right? After pregnancy, for 40 days, you're supposed to be on a certain diet. No exercise, you're not hitting the Pilates or yoga or anything in the first 40 days. Whereas here, we're like, oh, you got to snap back to your pre-body weight. So you got to hit the gym right away. I'm like, no, 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 nothing in the first 40 days. Your job for the first 40 days postpartum is just to nourish yourself and the baby. Like, that is it. That's all you're supposed to do. And how you eat, how you nurture your body, how you nurture your mind, your emotions, completely different things. So I think our society needs to understand that and create a better support system for the women going through that postpartum, because often we're just sort of on our own. We still live in a culture where they think maternity leave is like vacation. So we still come from this culture where we don't respect, how energy consuming, emotion consuming the whole journey of pregnancy and postpartum really is. This is where I love Eastern medicine and how much emphasis it focuses on that. It says it's not just a matter of women's health, it's just a matter of community health, right? So how a woman goes through pregnancy and postpartum, because women are determining and shaping the next generation. So if as a culture, if we take care of women and we take care of children, we're shaping the next generation. So I think it's a much bigger discussion that we should be having as a community.
Yeah, I feel like that's like part 2 because there's so much that I want to double click on there. And specifically even around your chapter that you get into kind of, anti-aging, and you talk about even like the toxins that we're exposed to on the daily, from glyphosate to emulsifiers to the artificial colors in the things that we are putting either on our lipstick or the candy that we consume. And I love that you're bringing awareness to people that are reading, because a lot of times we're just not exposed. And I feel like a lot of the things that they do here in the States either are banned in Europe and other parts of the world, but why? Who knows why they're actually allowed to be here? And so, how can we, as people who are going to be getting your book, how can we use this information so that we are helping prevent ourselves from kind of the toxins in our daily life? And do you think that's been causing, because you also talk about autoimmune disorders, and the rise of autoimmune disorders, that we have now more than 3 million people affected by autoimmune disorders, and just like 20 years ago it was only 2 million. So is there a correlation there?
100%. So we focus the work we do in our clinic, a big part of is environmental health. We help people connect the dots because I see a lot of people with healthy diet, lifestyle. They come to us with autoimmune conditions. They come to us with cancer diagnosis. And again, unfortunately, I'm seeing younger and younger patients in my practice with cancer diagnosis. And they struggle with the diagnosis because they're like, I'm eating healthy, I'm doing all the right things, and why me? I don't have any family history. Why am I getting this? So it can be very frustrating for most people who get these conditions. Like, I'm not smoking, I'm not doing anything. Like, why me? But environmental health is one of those highly ignored part of medicine. There's not enough research being done. There's not enough training being done to understand how our changing climate, how our changing environments really affecting us. But I see this every single day. So one of the sobering things I read recently was that the average age where girls get their period now is 8 or 9. Just a couple of decades ago, it was closer to 13, 14, right? So this is not genetic.
Wow.
This is all because of the things we're exposed in our environment, right? BPA in plastic, everything's plastic nowadays, right? Our food's in plastic, water's in plastic, milk's in plastic, everything's in plastic. So BPA is something called xenoestrogen, which is a chemical form, like it mimics estrogen. So the more plastic, more BPA I'm exposed to at a younger and younger age, it's going to activate my estrogen receptors, right? So now I'm going to hit puberty. My hormones are going to change much earlier. That's why people are having fertility issues. We are having cancer diagnosis younger and younger because all the chemicals, whether we are breathing them, eating them, touching them, however we're getting exposed is a silent sort of killer for us, right? And if we don't bring awareness to this, no amount of healthy diet, no amount of herbs, supplements, or exercise routines are going to counteract that. This is just as important. And we all have to be advocates and we have to vote. I always say vote with your wallet. So by being conscious of eliminating or favoring brands that are cleaner, they're doing the due diligence, knowing what the environmental health, EWG Dirty Dozen food list is every year, looking at what are the cleaner brands of makeup or shampoos to stuff I'm using to clean my kitchen. All of this needs to be part of a conversation. This is stuff we talk about in our doctor's visit, right? Because this is minimizing
Wow.
exposure. Do no harm is always going to be first and foremost. So this is something I'm glad you brought it up. It really needs to be a much bigger part of the discussion.
Yeah, it's huge. And while you're still on the front lines, as I mean, there's so many different avenues I can go into. The first that's coming up is 8 and 9 years old is just way too. Yeah, my daughter's 3, and I'm like, that's just way too young to be having your period. And so, as the moms are freaking out listening to this or watching this on YouTube, you're giving us a lot of tips on being able to minimize. But is this one of the reasons why you're also advocating for a 28-day reset?
Exactly. I
Can
think
resets mitigate the inflammation and the toxins?
Exactly. I think the more toxin load our body is asked to process, the more time it needs to do that, right? So if we make 28-day reset a part of our annual routine where every year, January, after the holidays, I'm going to dedicate 28 days to my self-care, to detoxifying, that really makes a difference. And at the last chapter of the book is actually a 20-day ritual. It's not just about 28 days, it's about how do I carry forward these pearls within my daily routine so I can continue the detox rejuvenation process on an ongoing basis, not just wait for those 28 days, right? So 20 minutes out of your day to focus on your self-care, to make sure that we're not building up more and more toxins as we go along. It's just as vital. So I think we need to focus on detoxification as not a luxury or a health and wellness trend. It needs to be a necessity so that we can purge these toxins and environmental toxins that we're exposed to on a daily basis so they don't do more permanent damage or harm to us in the long run. And I think sooner we start, the better, right? Why do we wait to get sick to do these things? We should start them now.
And, you know, for those that are curious, because you are on the front lines, what kinds of cancers are you seeing more and more now in your office that probably wasn't being seen, years ago?
Yeah. So, two of the biggest cancers that I'm seeing are breast and colon. So, in younger people. So, unfortunately, just last week, I saw two women. This is crazy. Two women who were diagnosed with breast cancer at the end of their pregnancy or right during postpartum. So, imagine giving birth and getting diagnosed with breast cancer. So, they were both postpartum going through chemotherapy. But yeah, I mean, I've seen 20-year-olds with breast cancer, 30-year-olds, pretty common, 40-year-olds, very common. So in women, breast cancer, I'm seeing a big uptick in. And in both men and women, colon cancer, we're seeing a lot of in younger and younger people because the gut microbiome, right? This is where gut health is so, so vital because everything we eat, we're exposed to is constantly changing the gut microbiome. And research studies show that gut microbiome is sort of our first line, biggest line of defense against cancer. So when the gut microbiome is compromised, it alters our immune system in the gut, makes us more susceptible to getting cancer cells to grow. So these two cancers, and the third cancer, surprisingly, I'm seeing more of is also thyroid cancer. And a lot of that is related to environmental toxins. So thyroid cancers, we're seeing younger and younger. So when I went to med school, which wasn't too long ago, I was told, these cancers start after 50, 60. We shouldn't even be screening people, right? So now if I'm seeing women in their 20s, 30s having breast cancer, and not too long ago, we were waiting till 50 to even do a mammogram. Now, finally, we're doing them at 40. But this just begs to, challenge us and say our guidelines. So when we're screening for colon cancer, used to be 50, now some cases 40 and above, but maybe should be even earlier. This is where technology and science can really help us detect these cancers much earlier so we can be more proactive in preventing them, detecting them, and treating them much earlier.
And do you think that the rise and uptick in the cancers that you're seeing, especially in young people, do you think it's stress? Do you think it's food? Do you think it's the toxins? Do you think it's the plastic everywhere? Is it a combination of all of it? Like, what is it if you were kind of prescribing us as a whole to be on the lookout?
Yeah.
Yes, I think everybody should get your book and do a 28-day detox. I'm a firm believer in it. And what else should we be looking at? Because I know that, parents who also not just have young kids, but maybe they have teenagers and they're after school and you get the quick, thing and you get like the processed foods because it's the granola bars or the, the chips and or the smoothies and all of those things. Is that actually helping or is it harming them?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a lot of ways to keep our life simple and easier while still giving our kids and ourselves a nourishing meal. So, this is where in the book I talk a lot about what are the key things you need to look out for? What are the things that you don't need to worry about so much? So, if I had to make a list, my top priority for everyone is really environmental health. So, take a closer look at your pantry, take a closer look at your medicine cabinet, in your kitchen cabinet where you're storing all your, Clorox and all that stuff. And we can clean those up first, right? So let's take a closer look. Do I need that bleach to be cleaning everything? No, right? Can I use more environmentally safe products to do my laundry, to clean my kitchen? The answer is yes. These products are easily available. They often don't cost that much more. Sometimes even, a good old bottle of some dish soap and vinegar will do 90% of the cleaning for you, right? So simplifying these things. And then the other thing I focus on is also, a lot of cosmetics, especially with young girls, with women. I do a deeper dive with cosmetics because this is something, whether you're spraying yourself with a perfume full of phthalates, whether it's putting this lotion that smells like berries and cream, but has all sorts of, dioxins and whatnot or plastic in it, that's not going to help you. So I always say, whatever you put on your skin, you should be willing to put in your mouth. If you're not, don't put it on your skin. So whatever you put it on your skin is completely getting absorbed. Is as good as eating it. So there's a lot of natural. So that's why I love Ayurveda skincare because there's so many simple, stuff that you can find in your kitchen to put on your face, right? As your skin brightener. I use sesame oil, almond oil as a moisturizer. I actually use coconut cream and milk in the shower to moisturize myself, and I don't need a lotion afterwards, right? So these are simple, simple things that we can do that have been around that are actually going to save money and decrease our exposure. And same thing with foods. There's so many quick and easy ways to get nourishing foods in us. There's some brands. So I always like to look for brands that are following this ethos and support them so that they become more visible and take up a bigger market share as they're competing with all these multinationals. So I think luckily the awareness is building. We have way better food options now, to be honest, than we did 5, 10 years ago, because of exactly like the work you're doing, the discussions we're having is making a change, and we can all be part of that.
Wow. I mean, this is such an enlightening episode. I feel like we can keep going and going and going and going. Before we get into our igniting round, Dr. Chiti, I wanted to, where can people get a hold of you? Where can we become a patient of your very large practice? And where can we get the book?
Absolutely. The book is available everywhere books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, online. And you can learn more about the work I'm doing on intentionalhealth.io. My Instagram is intentionalhealth_. And you can visit our website. You can just type in Cornell Integrative Medicine and you'll find our websites if you're interested in becoming a patient. I practice in New York City. So you're welcome to become our patient and learn. And we also have a lot of resources that we can share with everyone. But yeah, there's just so much out there. And my job, my passion in life is to simplify it and bring it to as many people as possible.
Okay, so we do this round called "Spill the Chai," and so you can answer as long as you want, as short as you want. But first, green smoothie or hot broth?
Ooh, hot broth. Because it's much easier to digest. So again, it's not about the nutritional content. How easy is it to digest? If I can digest it, I'm going to get 100% of those nutrients. If I do a green smoothie that might be so dense in calories and nutrients that I might not actually be able to digest it, I might only get 20, 30% of the nutrients, and the rest might become toxic and cause more GI symptoms. So the way I think about food is like, am I going to be able to digest this or not? Not just the content. So this is a perfect example.
And this is huge because I was such a smoothie girl in my 20s and early 30s. And I realized I'm more vata. I'm
Yeah.
vata and my dosha, and I can be pitta. But, and so I need warming foods. And I never understood it until, well, my mother in law started cooking whole meals all the time. And she's like, why are you doing this cold, 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 smoothies? And that's when and I was never bloated. I was always bloated with smoothies. So such a game changer. Thank you for that. So hot water in the mornings or hot water with lemon?
Not much difference. You can do either. I personally don't like lemon in my water, so I do hot water just plain. The only time I say don't do hot water with lemon is if you're more pitta. If you tend to have more acid reflux or indigestion, I typically recommend just hot water, not with lemon. But for most people, either or will work.
And bedtime, 9 p.m., 11 p.m.
Ideally, it's around 10, but definitely between 10 and 11 is ideal. A little bit earlier, even better, but 100% before midnight. Because you know what happens between 10 p.m. and midnight? That's when we get our growth hormone surge. If you talk about anti-aging, this is our elixir of youth, right? So growth hormone we all want more of. But if you are not in bed in deep sleep between 10 and midnight, we miss out on the growth hormone. So that's why I say if you can get closer to 10, even better, but definitely before midnight.
Okay. And the growth hormone is responsible for repairing our
For
cells.
repairing, yeah, making more muscle. So a lot of athletes, celebrities take growth hormone shots because it's anti-aging, helps with your skin, muscle building, burning fat, brain, brain function, cognitive function. So if you want to feel like you're in your 20s, you want that growth hormone.
So, okay, everybody going to sleep at 9 p.m.
Or have kids and you'll automatically fall asleep at 9 o'clock.
You'll just go to bed with them. Yeah, you'll go to bed at 7. Uh, and one final question that I ask everybody is, What does it mean to be brave?
I think being brave means being authentic, being intentional, and just true to yourself. So it's more about how you represent yourself and whether you're living your true dharma. That's what makes you brave. It's not about proving anything to anyone else, but manifesting your true potential.
Amazing, Dr. Chiti. You have been such an inspiration, and I feel like everybody, whatever you are doing, go ahead and get this book because I think it's really going to change the conversation and really spark a new dialogue of how we can take ownership and agency into our own life. So, thank you for being that force for so many people. And I cannot wait to see your practice grow and the amount of doctors that you're going to inspire to kind of come into this movement of new medicine.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for the work you're doing to bring awareness to a lot of these topics. I think you're bringing awareness to all these topics in a way that is meaningful, that's relatable, and that's actually actionable. So thank you also for the work you're doing.
Wow, what an amazing episode. She took my breath away as well. And I feel like my mind is just exploding with so many different ideas and ways that we can support our friends, our family members, our coworkers, and the mamas in our life, the elders in our life, our next door neighbors, because this is that information that we need to really brave our health. I was shocked when she talked about the number of cancer cases that have gone up in the last several years, and she's still on the front lines as a doctor. So go ahead, grab her book. I've linked it below in the show notes. Intentional Health. You can also get it at intentionalhealth.io. She is literally one of the leading pioneers in the functional medicine /MD/integrative medicine movement. You can also, if you want to be a patient, go ahead to CornellIntegrativeMedicine.com. That's CornellIntegrativeMedicine.com. You can go ahead and maybe become a patient and hopefully get your insurance to also pay for these visits if you are in the US. Now, you can go ahead onto her Instagram, Dr. Chiti Parikh. Also, Intentional Health. She is Intentional Health on Instagram and YouTube. And I will also link everything in the show notes. If you love this episode and if you're curious about going deeper in your health journey, maybe it is understanding more about your hormones and women's health, I've put together a couple of episodes that you can kind of dive in the show notes to just go deeper in your healing and your transformation in your health journey. Now, if you love this episode, please go ahead, share this with a friend. If you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and hit the button subscribe. It will mean the world to me if you could actually do that for us as we grow our show and we grow the audience. It really helps us grow the show more than you know. And if you haven't already, and this episode sparked some dialogue, it fired new neural pathways for you, go ahead and give us a 5-star review. This would mean the world. These reviews help us get into the hands of more people who need to be just a little bit more brave in their life. And you can also follow myself at Neeta Bhushan on Instagram and the Brave Table, and tag us. If there was a specific part of this episode that really resonated with you, let us know what it was. I will see you next time.